Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Joseph Chacon, Chief of Police here. I'm joined here this afternoon by Assistant City Manager Ray Arellano, as well as members of our executive staff. I'm here to provide an update on the investigation into the street takeover incident, also known as a sideshow that took place on Saturday, February the 18th. I'll begin by saying that I felt that we needed to have additional information to be able to provide prior to having this press conference. And the investigation has been ongoing, and that is why it has taken till today to have this press conference. This has been a large-scale, comprehensive investigation, and that investigation still continues. However, there is additional information that can be provided today that will help to understand what APD has been doing and the progress that has been made. Let me start by recapping the information that we have already provided. This began Saturday night at approximately 9 p.m. At 9:01 p.m., our 911 call center received a call of 5 vehicles blocking the intersection at Barton Springs and South Lamar and doing donuts. At 9:02 p.m., multiple callers began calling 911, stating there were more vehicles, they were racing, shooting off fireworks, circling the intersection, running red lights, and blocking traffic. At this time, there were no units available in that patrol sector, and units from an adjoining sector had to respond, which led to a longer response time. The first unit was dispatched at 9:14 p.m. and arrived at 9:23 p.m. Once on scene, the officer saw hundreds of people and many vehicles driving erratically and in some cases dangerously, and that they had taken over that intersection. Additional units were required before attempting to insert themselves into the crowd in an attempt to disperse that crowd. When enough units had arrived and officers attempted to disperse the crowd, they were met with open hostility and aggression. A total of 41 patrol units responded to this first initial incident, and the crowd was finally dispersed at 9:46 p.m. This was the first of 4 different sideshow events that occurred that evening. At 10:27 p.m., there were reports of vehicles at North I-35 near East Anderson exhibiting similar behavior. Officers arrived and quickly dispersed that crowd. Officers arrived at 12:58 a.m. and dispersed that crowd at 1:07 a.m. Then at 1:35 a.m., we received 911 calls of vehicles being driven erratically and that a fire had been started at the intersection of Metric and Break, and were met by a hostile crowd that threw rocks and bottles at them, as well as pointing lasers at them and their vehicles. Police vehicles were damaged, including body damage, smashed windows, and windshields, and equipment that was ripped off of the vehicle. That crowd was finally dispersed at 1:56 a.m. And it appears that they finally stopped their activity at just before 4 a.m. We had one officer sustain a non-life-threatening injury. He was treated at a local hospital and was released. We have no reports of civilian injuries. However, one of the videos circulating show 1 or 2 persons catching on fire during one of the sideshows. However, they did not go to a local hospital with any injuries or for treatment. We made 2 arrests that evening for evading arrest. The 2 arrested individuals were, and I'm just going to say their names and not spell them. We'll provide all this information at a later time for you. The first person, Riley Wright, white female, date of birth 3/5 of 2003. And the second individual, Stefan Regalado, a white male, date of birth December 11, 2005. Now I'll provide additional information that has been ongoing since that night. The following day, Sunday, February 19th, APD conducted operations related to the original incident that were twofold. The first part, tactical teams with APD conducted operations that resulted in the disruption of car club activity and the arrest of 4 individuals for the following charges. We'll put their pictures up here as we go through this. The first individual, Luis Martinez, a Hispanic male, date of birth February 15, 1992, for unlawful carrying of weapons by a felon, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and a probation violation for possession of controlled substance. The second individual, Joseph Springs, a black male, date of birth August 15, 1981, for delivery of controlled substance and unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. The third, Brian Serrano Benitez, a Hispanic male, date of birth July 14, 2003, for evading arrest, possession of marijuana, and unlawful carrying of weapons. And finally, Ali Noureddini, unknown race male, date of birth August 16, 2003, for possession of a stolen firearm. This was a total of 4 arrests, if you go to the next photo, with 8 felony charges and 1 misdemeanor charge, and then a total of 4 firearms were recovered, along with quantities of marijuana and methamphetamine. These are what you see right now coming out of this investigation, and there will be additional charges that will be coming against additional individuals in the coming days and weeks. The second part of the operations that took place on Sunday included tactical operational readiness drills in order to disrupt this type of activity should it occur again. Members of patrol support, the special response team, and the Metro Tactical teams took part in these drills. These drills will ensure a coordinated and controlled but effective response to similar activity in the future. A couple of points that I want to make before I open it up for questions. First, I want to address the reported delays in 911 calls being answered Saturday night. On a normal Saturday night, we have 16 call takers answering 911 calls. This past Saturday night, we had 12. At 10 p.m., that regular number of call takers drops to 12, and we had 7 on duty starting at 10 p.m. As you can see, we had a fewer number of call takers than normal and a highly elevated number of 911 calls coming in. From 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Saturday night, we had 390 calls come into the 911 call center. From 9 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. alone, we had 266 calls. As a point of reference, for the same time period, 1 week earlier, Saturday night, we had 65 calls come into the 911 call center. This elevated number resulted in very long hold times, the longest being just over 27 minutes. This is obviously unacceptable, and we have been working on the call taking issue for quite some time. We've made strides and are getting more applicants than at any time in recent history, but it takes time to hire them and to train them, and as you can see, we still have shortages. I also want to address questions that arose about our knowledge that this might happen if we had that knowledge prior to the event. On Friday night, February 17th, just before 10 p.m., we received a call into our call-taking center from the San Antonio Police Department about a possible street takeover on Saturday the following night. That was the extent of the tip. There was no other information, including who was involved, where it would take place, at what time, or any other information that might be verifiable. This weak intelligence was shared with the Austin Regional Intelligence Center, and they were unable to verify or provide further information related to the tip. The tip was passed to patrol, but due to the vague nature of the tip, there was not much that could be done to staff up or to deploy prior to the event occurrence. We know from our experience that these groups are using private and encrypted chat applications and direct messages, and many times our intelligence folks have no visibility at all into the communications. This led to the difficulty in identifying these groups in advance. Finally, I want to take a moment to thank all of the law enforcement agencies and partners that assisted in this investigation, particularly the Travis County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Department of Public Safety. There is a list of folks who were involved in this investigation, continue to be involved in the investigation, including the New Braunfels PD, San Marcos PD, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, San Antonio PD, Hays County Sheriff's Department, Live Oak PD, Selma PD, and the Dallas Police Department. As I've said, this is still an open and ongoing investigation, and the information that I may be able to further provide may be limited. I'll end my comments by simply putting up support for our men and women who faced incredible danger that night with very large crowds that were intent on harming them. And yet they stood the course and did what needed to be done to ensure public safety and to disrupt their activities. I assure you that that is what will happen moving forward. Our officers will be there, will be ready. The plans are in place to disrupt this type of activity. And even as we head into Spring Festival, which is coming up in a few weeks, we are fully staffed from a security perspective for Spring Festival and South by Southwest. And we will have teams deployed should this type of activity occur. My strong message to those individuals who want to do this: don't do it. You will find yourself arrested, your vehicles impounded, and whatever charges are applicable will be forthcoming. So with that, I'll take a few questions.
So I have a two-part question. Other cities like Houston and Dallas have specific task force, like teams that really dive into this. Is that something that you all would consider? And going off of the next part is, you mentioned TCSO and DPS. Are you guys going to call on them to help enforce these types of crimes?
We would call on Travis County and DPS to assist us in the future should this happen. My staffing levels are not at a point right now where I can create another specialized unit. What we have to do is use these multidisciplinary, multi-departmental teams to come together, to operationally drill together, and prepare to be able to disrupt in a very controlled manner. I think what you saw that night was our officers that, had they been fully swarmed, who knows what might have happened. They had to back out of situations, de-escalate the situations, and then regroup to be able to further disrupt without serious injury coming to anyone. So we will continue to do that.
And quickly, I know the 911 call center was seeing about 7 people. I think you said around 10 p.m., 12 in total. When it comes to officers, how is staffing looking that night in terms of units out on the streets?
I don't have the full number, but I can tell you that on any given night, we are going out understaffed right now. And I'm talking about minimum staffing levels. I'm not even talking about optimal staffing levels. We're usually below that minimum staffing level. So because of that, I've had to be moving people from specialized units and from investigations back to patrol temporarily on short-term basis to answer 911 calls, and then go back to their regular assignments. And that, I'm sure, is what we were facing that night as well.
Chief, is there anything in particular that you think, at least with the staffing that you have, can be implemented to avoid this happening again, especially when we're talking about busy street intersections?
So what I will say is that without going too much in or compromising the integrity of the investigation, we have much greater visibility into into the people that were involved based on the arrests that we have made, as well as all of the investigation that has been going on since then. And what we're hoping is that we're going to have better intel coming in ahead of time to be able to pre-deploy and to quickly quell any kind of sideshow events that might happen in the future.
The mayor mentioned working with you on a temporary solution to address the 911 hold times. What would that look like?
We've been working to see how we can do some temporary fixes. What makes it incredibly tough is that 911 call takers are mandated by state law to be TCOL, or our licensing board, have a license to be able to do it, as well as to be able to pass all of the background checks that are needed to be able to access criminal justice information. So those two things make it tough to hire people. That's why it has been tougher than maybe hiring in other departments or for other types of functions. Believe me, we are being as creative as we can to get as many folks, including not only holding people over from previous shifts, hiring very heavily on overtime, but I even have sworn staff that is in the 911 call center taking 911 calls right now instead of being out on the street.
The officer that was injured, how's he doing today?
He is doing fine. There's going to be some follow-up that's going to be required, but he should fully recover.
We've had some folks reach out to us and say that they have experienced these street takeovers previously. For example, one on Route 60 3 weeks ago. Are you all aware of that? And was anything done at that time to make sure that this didn't happen?
So, obviously, particularly large departments, but and especially departments in this region, share information with one another. Even I, at the position that I am, which I don't have visibility into everything, have seen these things happen in other large cities such as Dallas and Houston. So, I'm not going to say that we knew exactly what the nature of this was, heading, with the vague information that we had in the tip that came in, but certainly that is going to be where we start moving forward.
And do you have any indication of where these groups came from? The DPS affidavit said that the man that they arrested was from Dallas.
I don't have addresses on them, I'm sorry.
Chief, you mentioned the 41 patrol units responded to the initial incident. Do you know how many responded to all the incidents in total, and also by patrol units? Is that one officer? Is that a couple?
Generally, it's one officer in each patrol unit. Sometimes the officers are doubled up. I don't have the numbers for the other incidents, but all of the other incidents were smaller than that first one.
One more point of clarification. You were mentioning the 65 calls to 911 last Saturday night compared to this Saturday night. Was that 65 compared to the around 300 over the course of an hour, or around 200?
So the 65 is compared to that half hour that I said we had 266 calls.
I think one of the big things our viewers are asking is South by, obviously coming up, you touched on this. When we're looking at, your team's going out with minimal staffing right now, and I understand that's just the situation that you're dealt with right now. When you say you're going to be fully staffed for South by, does that mean those partnerships with DPS, TCSO, area departments? What does that look like?
So generally, we've been able to take our own staff and to fully staff South by with it. We always receive help from DPS and from Travis County, and we'll gladly accept that aid. But when I say that we're 100% staffed, you'll have a local officer, whether that's us, Travis County, or DPS, that is working that event.
And I'm so sorry, was it 260 from 9 to 9:30?
266 from 9 to 9:30.
Gotcha, thank you so much.
Yep. All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Sure.